Now we will go with Dave Harcourt from BT, British Telecom. For those who don't know, but yeah, I know I must say BT, but yeah. So Dave is a CISO for BT International and a BT Fellow with decades of experience shaping cybersecurity at scale. Scale is important, and he will talk about that. He sets security strategy for BT and influences direction across industry, driven by a clear principle, make secure by default the easiest path to follow. His focus is on security that actually gets adopted, which is what we are interested in. So let's get you started. You're here.
Cool. Welcome. Good afternoon. So I am not going to do a tech talk. For anyone who wants to listen to us talk about technology stuff, Sam Kate, wherever Sam's in the audience, he's here somewhere over there. Sam's talking tomorrow about some of the technical things we're doing. I'm going to talk to you a bit about why is this important. Normally, I kind of worry when I'm going after Ollie from NCSC because he normally steals all the thunder about scaring people about why the challenge is an important one and why we need to go after it. But I think I need to give him a needs improvement this year. To give a bit of a view, I guess, from my point of view about, why is CHERI an important thing for us? So telecoms, just give you a context of telecoms and why telecoms is important. So we all know, we've all got one of these, right? We all know that this is important from a telecoms point of view. But actually, what we do in terms of telecoms goes so much further. Telecoms underpins just about everything that makes the UK work. There's two critical sectors, telecoms and power. Without telecoms or power, nothing works. You can't get cash out your cash machine, the traffic lights don't work. Conference systems like this just fail, right? So everything is dependent on telecoms. So you can understand, maybe you don't understand, because I struggle to sleep at night. And that's kind of why. When I think about, the topic we're talking about today, CHERI, memory safety, the telecoms industry has evolved significantly. I've been with BT now for 35 years this year, 25 of those in cybersecurity. Just before I joined, we started moving from days where telecoms used to be very mechanical, where you'd make a phone call and things would click and whir in an exchange and you'd physically connect a path all the way through the network to get from point A to point B. We started to digitize that around the time I joined BT. That wasn't too bad because we used to buy proprietary bits of kit. So we have a hardware, we'd have software systems running on top of that to doing digital things over time. But they were proprietary. They weren't really the sort of things that people hack and you get lots of, we did get vulnerabilities in them, but they were very private and they weren't really well known. We've now moved to a world where actually most telecom systems that we're leveraging and we're using today are using commoditized hardware and compute that you can go and buy. It's big grunty stuff, but you can go and buy it commercially and you can run anything on top of it. So this is the sort of things that we talk about the volumes of vulnerabilities we face today. We are building telecom systems on top of platforms that have got those volumes of vulnerabilities that we've been scarily talking about this morning. And you think about the criticality of telecoms to the infrastructure, and we're actually in a world where, for us, that inherent risk of the UK falling apart because of the volumes of vulnerabilities we have, the volumes of risk that we continue to face is going up and up and up. And we have to start thinking differently. And that, for me, is why this topic is so important from a BT perspective, because it is starting to think differently about how we address the challenges that we face. And we can't continue to face those challenges in the way we do that. So that's a little bit about why it's a growing challenge and kind of why this is important. The other thing for me that, this sort of conversation is so important about is the ecosystem. So, I talked about we used to build things in a world where it was proprietary systems from one manufacturer. They provide the software, they provide the hardware. So we get everything from the likes of Cisco or Ericsson, and it was quite simple and easy. That, again, is not the world we're in today. Today, we're in a world where we buy software from one manufacturer, we buy hardware from someone else, we've got an operating system that comes from another party, and we've got an ecosystem that we are integrating together to make everything work. And therefore, we need to come together as an industry to drive the change and think differently. We can't just go to one person or one supplier and ask them to do everything for us, because that's not the way that modern systems are, unfortunately, built. But that's why this sort of conversation is so important. I guess my challenge as we think about the engagement we've got here, and I was just reflecting slightly earlier on, having sat through all of the talks that we've had today and this morning, this afternoon, we didn't start this morning, did we? Is that it's still quite a geeky conference. I was talking to a few people over the last break about who we've got involved in this conversation to drive the business, right? We talk about how do we drive adoption. The way we've got to drive adoption is we've got to move this from a geeky conversation into a more of a business conversation. We've got to get more organizations understanding the growing risk, and what we need to do in terms of changing that. And we have to change that kind of from the top down. And that's why, for me, this is a topic that I'm quite passionate about. And I can talk geek. For those who know me well, I can talk geek stuff. And I'm not talking geeky stuff today. Because this is now about, for me, how we turn this discussion into something which is more focused from a business perspective. Because as I was talking to someone else earlier today, money makes the world go around, right? And it's only when we start thinking about how we drive the conversation from a buying power perspective that we really start to create the drive and momentum that will push this technology out and start the implementation. I'll leave you with that as a thought. Plenty of time left, actually. I'm running ahead. But give you some time for Q&A if anyone's got any questions. I'm not going to try and throw the cube. I might throw the cube.
How do we convince companies that they need to invest not only in their in our hardware, but also our software, in particular compilers? Because in my experience, it's actually very, very, very difficult to get this kind of support. And we've kind of needed it for a while, not just in the context of CHERI, definitely in the context of CHERI as well, but in general, there's a lot of work to be done here. And everyone, from a business standpoint, everyone keeps saying, yes, we need it, but no one's willing to step up. Do you have any ideas on how we can solve this?
That's a common problem in the world of cyber and security, right? And it's the Babel fish that we all need to kind of leverage and use, because boards talk about risk and money and pounds, and we've got to turn this conversation firstly into one about risk. And I think we've done quite a good job of doing that when we look at some of the numbers that we show, the volumes of vulnerabilities that are going up, right? That helps paint the risk view. We then need to turn that risk view into what does that mean in terms of potential impact on cost, revenues, reputation. Those are the things that if you kind of go into a board, right, those are the sort of conversations you have at exec level. So when we can turn it into that sort of conversation that the execs kind of understand, then we can start to capture the interest that drives it down. But that's the challenge. I mean, I do think the one thing for me, I'm going to go off track from talking about CHERI for a little bit, but I was reading a relatively recent blog from Google on what they've been doing with Android as well, on the adoption of Rust in Android. And not only has that driven down the volumes of vulnerabilities that they've had, it's also improved the efficiency. Now, there's a conversation that helps with the board, right? Efficiency, because there's always a drive on efficiency and how we can do things faster and we can do things cheaper. So that's, again, a way that we need to think about how do we kind of feed those sort of elements that drives the business. Because the business doesn't really talk about technology or understand. Many businesses don't understand technology, right? I'm quite fortunate to have an exec where I've got at least a few people around the board who understand and can talk technology. Does that help?
I agree with everything you're saying for sure, but what I've been hearing in my conversations around lately is that businesses, companies, executives are aware now that it's a problem, but again, no one's willing to step up. Sometimes, like Google's doing it internally, then there's some other stuff, but there's a lot of talk and no do in my experience. Google's doing some really good steps, but I guess how do we assign responsibility now? I guess the conversations from earlier in the morning are very much that, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there's a magic answer to that one. I mean, it's, this is, I think, a topic that is just not talked about enough, right? It's great to see, this conference, twice the volume of engagement, and I know this is the first year that we've been here, twice the volume of engagement since last year, right? Because it's a growing conversation, right? And we are certainly going to do more to help to grow that conversation from BT's perspective in the telco sector. But recently I posted about the Google Android Rust article I talked about. I posted that on LinkedIn. It's probably one of the least responses I've had on a LinkedIn post that I've done in the last 4 months. And it's, I think for me, that's part of the challenge is there's the degree of, do people care enough about this to do something? I think sometimes, it takes an organisation that's brave enough to step in to start the journey and start the conversation, and then others will follow. But we have to have some big names do it, but do it very publicly, not quietly.
I don't want to dominate the conversation, so that's good. So would you like to invest in compilers?
We are. Sam's going to talk about some of the stuff we're doing tomorrow, though. So come and listen to Sam tomorrow.
Okay. One more question? Or do we continue?
We have done 10 minutes. So we can always give it to Paul next.
Okay, so let's continue. Then thank you very much. Thank you.